Hey, Kevin. Hi, how are you doing? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, good. Well, I'm just starting here, getting going. Whoops. Yeah, I don't do much. We have a meeting on Saturday that I get ready for a little bit better. But I did try to get ready for this before, but oh, wait, Sandy's here. Okay, great. All right. Here's Sandy. She had the dream of all dreams. Sandy had the dream of all dreams last time. I told my wife your dream, Sandy, and she said that's spooky. But I kind of told it to her spooky, you know. But it's that is a dream of
Oops.
yeah, are you let me see if I can unmute you. Well, you're
There we go.
unmuted.
I just did that.
Yeah. Well, you know, Sandy's dream was hi Tim, how are you doing? Well, why don't you tell your dream, Sandy? It was so good.
Well, you can tell it. It was I
Okay.
thought it was interesting because it was a reflection of what you said in the dream meeting last time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just to me it was you know, there's a couple things about that. Hey, Gary, how you doing? Gary's got a really good dream this time too. But uh what I was saying, I told my wife about it, you know, is it just describes, you know, the whole idea of doing of active imagination. I mean, there is a flower with petals on only one side, and it's a breathing flower. And if you will pay attention to the flower, petals grow one at a time. And hi, Jorge. Hello, Jorge. I was just telling a dream to start out with. This was a dream that Sandy had, and it is a it's just such a beautiful dream. I mean, there was a flower with petals on only one side, okay, and it was a breathing flower. And if you would lend your attention to the flower, petals would start appearing on the side that they were missing. And then a voice came and said, "We do not come empty-handed." Now, Sandy, am I telling that wrong?
Well, that's okay. I like the way you tell it. I just thought it would be neat to add that it was a reflection of what you said about Kevin's dream. Behold the image.
Yes, to
Remember that?
hold the image.
Behold the image.
Yeah, behold the image. Yes. You know, this is something I've discovered, you know, just I want to get into Gary's dream in just a second here. Uh, but and Jorge, if you have a dream too, we can go after it. But you know, one thing I've noticed myself doing active imagination, you know, is that uh, you know one of the things that Jeffrey Raff is talked about in oh wait here McKenna. This looks like a relative of Gary's. Is it? No, it's Overguard. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it's that you know that Jeffrey Raff says when you're first starting out on this, you know, that you need to if things aren't happening, he says, make them happen. You know, in other words, go in to the other being and be that being, you know. And this came up with the here, I'm just going to put everybody on mute for just a second, but unmute yourself if you want to. Okay. But anyway, the idea was this, that if you will, the thing is this: when they're first starting out, these people that come up don't have a lot of consciousness, and if you will just come into their consciousness and be them, and then say what you think they would say. This reminds me of what Jung had a patient who dreamed that she was a cocoon and then she became a caterpillar. And then he asked her, he says, well, what do you think about caterpillars and cocoons? And she says, I don't know. I have nothing, no images about them. And this always used to annoy him. So then he'd say, well, what do you think I think about cocoons and caterpillars? And then she had no end of things to say what Jung thought about cocoons and caterpillars. But I mean, that was the way he could get her to say stuff. So this is the same thing with the images. I mean, there's this wonderful saying of Hermes, I am thou and thou art I, and I use this as kind of a breath. And I first say, I am thou. And then I try to imagine the person and take hold of their hand and maybe kiss them or something. And then I say, and thou art I. And then I'm them. And then I have them take hold of my hand, and I'm just going back and forth and back and forth. And, it's just a way of doing some practice on and lending consciousness to those figures. Well, anyway, Gary, you had such a wonderful dream. Could you tell us your dream, and we'll get going on dreams here, because that was a good one.
Yeah, you got one. There's also one that I never did. I was pretty much clueless what it was, but
Well, tell either one. I don't care. You tell. One thing I would say about last week's session, the dreams were a little bit harder, but did you notice that the more we worked on them, even though it was agonizing, at the end, then something happened, I thought. So sometimes it's a little, it's hard work, but go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the one I can't figure out, because it looked like you were figuring out these dreams that I certainly couldn't figure out last week. So in this dream, I'm in a skyscraper close to the top, and I can't tell if it's an office building or a shopping center. We hear there's some sort of chemical fumes above us and we need to evacuate. I see a mask too far away and go pick it up. I go over to where the elevators are, but it's too late. They've already left and there are many people waiting. I head towards another part of the building. There are two large blast doors that are in the process of closing. I shout desperately, and the people controlling it allow me to enter before finishing closing them. Mm-hmm. I am with some Black women who are the store's employees. Apparently, this is a toy store, but unlike any toy store I've seen. Mostly, it is botanical gardens, kind of like the Denver Botanical Gardens, with a winding path that leads up. It is dark, and they say the lights will come on automatically when the store opens. There are many plants, but mostly startlings.
Mostly what?
Like beginner plants that are just
beginning. Oh, yes. All right. Yeah. So, yeah.
I follow a winding path up to the far end where there is a cool rock bench that look over the entire gardens. I sit with someone that is bringing me up. It is very peaceful. And that's it.
Okay. Well, now you start out at the top of a skyscraper. So, and there is an issue with something is wrong with the air up there.
Yeah, apparently, I think it's floors. I can't be at the very top because it's like a floor above me. Anyway, there's like fumes that are going to be coming down.
Yeah, well, this, it means, I would say, this is, again, I can only do this as if it's my dream. So I'm doing what I would do if this was my dream. But I would say that I'm too high up, and the air there is going to become unbreathable soon. So I need to descend, but I can't descend because of a collective issue. There's some issue where the collective is clogging any way of descent. Okay. Finally, though, I come upon a transparent, something that's more transparent, less opaque. It's a glass doors. I'm assuming it's a glass elevator. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But it descended. Somehow you got down to the gardens, right?
No, I had to start out, I couldn't use the elevator at all. I had to just go to another part of the building, and, you know, it must have been on a lower floor, but I have no idea how. You know, one of those dream things that don't really make sense.
Do you think that and when you got into the gardens that they were on the ground floor, or where were they?
I just know it felt like in a way that I'd gotten out of the skyscraper, like I
Yeah,
was
I
apart
would
from it.
think, to me, that the gardens are a symbol of the paradisal state, which is not up in the clouds. It is on the earth. So and there's a winding path to get there. So this is the serpent path. It has to do with not with the builder of roads in this place is the unconscious.
Right.
The roads aren't straight. They always said there's no such thing in nature as a straight line, except for one was meteors, and there was another one. I can't forget the other one, but otherwise there's no straight lines. So anyway, you've
The only thing in nature that's straight is light, a light beam.
yes, a strola. That's what they call it in Norwegian. A strola, sunbeam.
And perceptually, the horizon.
Yes.
That's the ocean, but everything else is curved.
Yes. Even the flight of a meteor. I think Jung mentioned that one time. But anyway, so let's just kind of summarize it, because I think we got a little bit of a handle on it.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's because I think, yeah, being stuck and
you're too high up
and blocked by the collective, and
the collective is blocking you,
and then like the other is kind of like getting down to like the subconscious almost.
Yeah, now you're coming down. So then after you've found out that that you're too high up and the air there's can't breathe, and there's no way to descend because of the some collective issue, some what you would call pretty much the conscious attitude, or the ordinary reality, pretty much. And then but then you do get down into the vegetative world, and there's new growth there. There's startlings. So it has a serpent path, and there is a place on a rock. You're sitting on the rock, and it's a place there's a solid foundation. You sit on the solid foundation so that you can look out at this rooted world, which is far from the skyscraper. The skyscraper is so disconnected from the earth, yet the rooted world has a strong foundation, a rock to sit on,
right?
And it's has that. So if I was having this dream, and my conclusion would be, again, how do I become closer to the rooted world? How do I get a stronger foundation? And that really is through the serpent path, the winding path. I mean, the only way I get there is through the unconscious. You know, the skyscraper is vertical lines, you know, there's no serpentine path in the elevator, you know. So it is that is a dream of very much like the moral of a fairy tale, that the healing thing, the thing that lifts the curse or cures the enchantment, is animal helpers or nature or something to do with the rooted world, you know, is the curing, healing thing, you know, which is not the conscious attitude. I mean, that's what you pretty much get, is the ego can't help you now, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, does anyone have anything to add? Anybody, Kevin or Sandy or Jorge or Ivan or Tim?
I don't know if it's an addition, but it's just a word of thought. I was thinking perhaps the building is a symbol of patriarchy, and the clouds are sort of the suffocating part of the patriarchy.
Yes.
And yeah, that's all I have.
It'd be it's pretty much also could be the logos. It's you know, it's something disconnected from the feminine for sure. Tim, did you have something?
Well, I'm just wondering what your association is in this dream with the Twin Towers. If there's any conscious connection with that event.
You know, if anything, you know, when I saw the mask thing and, you know, thinking about it afterwards, I was thinking more like the COVID-19 than the Twin Towers. You know, I thought, wow, is that related?
Yeah, I thought
the, you know, the invisible gas that's coming for us, you know.
And you were going to put on a mask.
Right.
You know, my wife was doing a mandala today, and when she got done, it says, it's the coronavirus. You know, but anyway, yeah, there could be some social things. I'm always one that says, well, we'll consider the social later, but let's first think of the of how what this has to do with our unconscious life and our souls. Okay, but that's fine. Now, Ivan, didn't you have a dream that you wanted to tell? I don't care how long it is. We can break it up into parts.
I have lots of dreams, but I'm not going to tell all of them. So the dream I have actually is this one I wanted to talk about isn't too long. Okay. Although I wasn't sure if it was technically one dream or two dreams, but they seem connected, so I'll just go through it. So I'm out walking about, and I'm wearing like shorts and a t-shirt, and I see what in my mind is a drugstore, like a Walgreens or something like that. But it's very grandiose. There's like, think about like steps going into a stadium, perhaps, or something like that, with lots of people entering it. And I decided that it makes sense for me to stop by the drugstore to get fever medicine for some reason. But in my dream, I am aware that there's a virus going around. And I'm realizing that there's lots of people. I'm shoulder to shoulder with people. I'm walking up these steps into this drugstore, and I'm realizing this is a reckless decision, but I still decide to just go forward with it. And so I go in, and I'm going through the shelves, and everything is kind of, you know, anything of any use is gone. But I'm still kind of looking around, even though I don't have an urgent need for this thing, and I hadn't planned to do it at the beginning, and I'm not wearing any mask or any protective anything. I've just chosen to do this at the moment. So that was the first part that I wasn't sure if it's connected or not. But the second part of the dream was I'm going to go see some music show, and it's at a bar of some sort. But it's not like the sort of bar that would generally host a live event. Like I go in and it seems almost like a Buffalo Wild Wings or something like that, kind of corporate, and doesn't really have a stage or a setup for that sort of thing. And they have and I'm with a group of 3 other people, but I don't know them well in my dream. I don't know them in real life at all. And I go in and there is someone going around taking people's temperatures, but it's like, it's not like an SS person, but it has that feeling in my mind of like this authority is coming to me with this temperature and I'm feeling afraid of them. And they take my temperature and they say I have a temperature of 110 degrees.
Whoa.
And in my dream, I'm going, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. I wouldn't be standing here if I had 110 degrees. In real life, I would be, mortified if that were to happen and want to leave. But in my dream, I'm very upset. I'm very combative with this person, and I'm saying, of course I don't have your temperature is wrong. I can't have a temperature of 110 degrees. And so I get kicked out, and the people I'm with take me back to my home. And in the car, I'm riding in the passenger seat in the front, and I'm not myself. I am being extremely rude. I'm like pushing my seat back all the way into the people in the back seat, and I'm breathing all over everyone, even though I might be sick. I'm just being a terrible person. And then I get back to my house and I go into a basement to quarantine myself. And I have like a really dingy bed with no blankets in a corner of an unfinished basement with like a single light. And I go and decide I'm going to hide out there. And then as I lay down, there's mosquitoes. Do you know that noise where
Whining.
mosquito buzzes right by your ear and you hear it and it's going zzz? So as I'm laying down, these mosquitoes keep buzzing by my ear and I'm swatting at my head doing this and trying to get them to go away. And that's when I woke up. And that was the dream.
Okay. Well, when you have a dream this long or something, it's never a problem, but you just have to consider it image by image. In fact, any dream, even if it's a short dream, you always consider it image by image. So each
Can I ask a
image
couple
is.
questions about that?
Pardon me?
I'm just curious, when you're swatting at these mosquitoes, are you thinking about them being disease carriers, or is that just an irritation?
It's an irritation, but I'm unable to even get them. Like they just keep coming and I can't reach them.
Yeah. Well,
It's not that you can't reach them, it's that you can't connect with them? Or is that the deal?
Yeah. They're, for whatever reason, I just keep missing and they're just elusive.
So it's an irritation that is present, but you can't do anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we've all experienced. I'm sure. It's what's interesting about this dream, and also with Gary's, is there is an element of this thing that we're going through is entering the unconscious. At least the unconscious, always likes to choose images that they think would be tantalizing to you. And then they present their little drama using images that they think are going to be able to tell their story, but also something that's going to, something from your, remember the dream maker, is this, spirit is, at least for some, the alchemist, spirit was the image maker, so it's the dream maker here. But anyway, let's just start out that you are at a drugstore, which is almost like an art museum. I mean, it's built like some kind of museum in Chicago or something, and with steps that go up. So somehow this potentially curing thing in this environment has taken on almost Olympus-like.
Yeah, it reminded me of like a Colosseum or something.
Yes, it's exactly. It's like the Parthenon, almost. So it's this. It's achieved almost a religious type or godlike, Greek godlike. I mean, it's not. It seems pagan, You know, I mean, you don't, well, sometimes you'd see a church like that, but anyway, then, you know, you potentially have a fever. So what does it mean to have a fever? And you know, the virus is going around. And what it means to have a fever is that that it has something to do with transformation. Whenever cooking occurs, you know, that means that something's going to be transformed. And you know what alchemy, in alchemy, really, when they're talking about cooking, they mean that you apply your attention to something because it incubates and it broods and it gains temperature when you give your attention to it. So you know, in a dream, I would say this, I wouldn't say this about outer life, okay, but in a dream, when there's heat being generated, it usually means that an image is being brought to life or is coming to life. Okay, so let's just say that for now. I'll table that. I'm not saying I'm happy with that, but I'm just going to say that. Okay, then you know, then you're standing shoulder to shoulder with the mob, you know, the mass, and it's reckless. So if I was going to look at this in a Jungian context, I would say that you know, I'm about to give birth to an image or some type of unconscious contents, yet again, like something like Gary's, I'm in the mass. Somehow the mass is dangerous to the person who's about to give birth to the image. So anyway, I can't read my notes. You have no mask. You're what was the last part after you thought it was reckless? Because I can't read my notes.
Oh yeah, I'm not wearing any mask or any protective anything. Like I'm totally unprepared. Is my feeling.
Okay, well, essentially, and you. Oh, here's the other thing, and I've seen this too. Charles is here. Okay, hi Charles. Hi Charles. We're just talking about Ivan's dream here. We're only halfway through it, so you know, we'll catch up here in a second. But anyway,
but you also
you know,
said there was all the good stuff in the store is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you're there in this repository of useful and good things, but everything is already gone.
Yeah, and I'm also there needlessly. Like I don't need to be there. So I'm taking making a reckless decision, but I don't even have to be doing it.
It almost seems like it's a false temple or something because it has the grandiose exterior. You follow the mob in, but when you get there, you realize that it isn't at all what you needed.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that we've all seen as you go into the where they've got the like cold medicines. There's just completely empty. They're all sold out. So anyway, this place that you went in to potentially get to do something about the fact that you think you have a fever, you're not sure. There's nothing there for you. And the reason is the mob has already taken it all away. So since the mob has taken everything away, there's nothing there for you. You know, in fact, they're defiling the temple to a certain extent. You know, where we were looking for potential healing, and you know, I think that the idea here too is that because of the pandemic or something, the drugstores have almost become like a temple, you know, I mean, there's something about them that has a cult-like atmosphere or something related to healing or something. So then we're going to go into, let's put this aside now, but we'll bring it back later. Okay. So then you're going to see the lyrical. You're going to, it's a shift in scene where you're seeking out the lyrical, and it's in a place that's inappropriate for the lyrical. It's like a drugstore being a temple. Here now, a bar is that's a corporate bar. I mean, one that's not has no its character is totally commercialized, and this is the place of the lyrical, you know. I mean, so now you're there with 3 other unknown people. Okay, well, you're there with your conscious function, and the 3 other functions are unconscious. So, you know, these are the 3 doors to the unconscious. They're with you. They create a quaternity, but you don't know who they are. So they are far from consciousness, or farther from consciousness than you are, you know. Okay, then now the authorities come, and they are checking and they give you a false reading. They give you a false reading that the authorities are saying that the cooking or whatever's happening in you is something like the phony temple and the phony drugstore. I mean, the phony bar and the phony drugstore, the phony temple. Their temperature too is bogus. So you've got pretty much 3 bogus things here, and yet the authorities are telling you this, and so you're upset, and then you go home. You're going home, and it seems like the shadow's coming out. You know, I mean, you're assuming the role of your own shadow, or you are in a car with the shadow, and you don't like the shadow. And
Very much seemed like I was my own shadow. Yeah.
yes, I mean, you're basically are whenever the shadow means typically that you're there's some you have an affect or a compulsion that is happening that you have very little control over. So that is when the shadow is in control. You know, so the shadow in you is in control. It might not be you, but the shadow has taken you over. So when you went through the drugstore where they had nothing to cure you because the collective had taken it all, then you go into the lyrical, and it seems to be not an appropriate vehicle for the lyrical, and you're there with 3 other parts of you that are far from your consciousness, yet somehow you're associated with them, and the authorities who take temperatures at this place are telling you that you're out of bounds, you're out of limits, and you need to there's something wrong with you that is not acceptable. So then you go home, you're rude, you're breaking all the rules, but then you go in. Now this is very interesting. So now we've had these 3 scenes, the drugstore that's a temple, the place of the lyrical that's too commercialized, with the with authorities that give us obviously false information that stigmatizes us, okay, as someone who's very stigmatized now. I mean, so in other words, the authorities of the phony place are stigmatizing us or making us look like we are unacceptable and need to be leave even this phony place. Then we take the vehicle home, and the shadow seems to be in control. Then there is the shift. This is the shift, which is kind of what they call the lysis, the conclusion. You're in the unconscious, yet it's dark. You're in the basement. You're in the underground world, you know. But it's very dingy. It's a horrible place, you know. And meanwhile, you're being hounded by devils, you know, little devilish things, you know, are hounding you in the unconscious. Because I don't really think this is the it's an improper participation with the unconscious. You're there, but it is and you're sleeping there, and you're down in the unconscious, but there is an aspect of it that is unfriendly to, I would say the only good thing I could say about it is it's the would be the negredo. You know, you're starting at this unformed mass, you know, so you're starting at the beginning in the unconscious, but it's not a very pleasant place at this point. There's something problematical about it. And then down there are the devilish whining things. So these are the spirits of the underworld. Are they know very well how to annoy you, and they're doing it, and you're helpless. Okay. So, you know, this is a real almost like the Odyssey, you know. I mean, it has a flavor to it of a travel story, you know. I mean, it's a real adventure. I mean, you can say it's not an adventure you'd like to take, but it is an adventure. I mean, and it has a story. Now, you can say the story doesn't make any sense to you, but the story is the in this age of the pandemic, the drugstores have become temples, but they're inappropriate temples, and all of their healing medicine has been taken away by the collective. So that means, of course, it can't be a temple, you know, because the healing thing is just you know, is just I guess it's just sucked up by the collective. So there is no healing thing. Then you move into a potentially healing lyrical, yet it's doesn't have the right venue for it. And like the mosquitoes, there's devils there too, and they are, you know, telling you things that you know are not true, but are you know, potentially they're just strictly you know, they're telling you something that's wrong, and that what they're telling you that's wrong is also not helpful. You know, the authorities are not healing either; they're giving you false information. And then there's the journey home, but your journey home, the shadow aspects in you are have control over you, and then you go into the basement, which is an inappropriate place to call home. But the one thing you can say good about it is it's in where normally the healing things come from, is from the underworld. yeah, this underworld seems hellish, devilish, you know. So now how to make sense of all this? I don't know, but I like it. I don't care. You know, when I get kicked in the butt by a dream, I don't take offense. You know, I try to figure out what it is. You know, if I throw an I Ching and it just gives me a horrible uh oracle, like you're gonna get blindsided. You have no idea what's coming, baby.
So
I I
something.
I like it. Okay, let's hear some more people. What do you think? I like this dream.
One thing that I thought was interesting is, so he's taken home by, the three other senses, and three other functions. And he knows he has to quarantine. And quarantining is, he knows he has to be in the basement to quarantine. So that really
Oh,
does
yes,
seem
I miss
like
that.
the start of the Negredo. But it also seems to be a warning that, that it's not, but this is going to be, all a mythical, mythological journey, because, the rest of it has started off with, like, it is like an odyssey of this, all this seeking, and like, no, only to come home, and at home to have to be, actually imprisoned in this, kind of unpleasant place when you begin. So it does seem like the Negretto, like the putrefaction that you begin with before you start.
Before you start the healing, and I really do think that this is giving me pretty much two or three different versions of of false cures for what ails me, you know, and yet they're very elaborate, you know, and so I thinking that I'm in the right place at the end to start my healing journey, but either it or I are not have some work to do, you know. So anyway, the dream is very in a very important dream. Now, if I wanted to make this even more um, if I wanted to honor this dream, because I think it's worthy of honor, I would draw, like, in on a piece of paper 4 different scenes, and I would color them, and I would try to make this a numinous journey. Because don't you think, Ivan, you know, I often have dreams like this, and even though they seem a little bit maddening, they also have a luminosity to them. You know, there's something about them that is I can't that I can't get out of my mind. There's an unforgettable aspect to it, you know. And if I was to do this myself, draw these 4 things and color them, I know that the dream would gradually, I would make sense of it. You know?
Yeah, the only thing I could start to make sense of, but now I'm not even sure if that was, when I woke up, not necessarily in the dream, but I wondered if the mosquitoes represented things that I didn't want to be hearing.
That could be too. It's they well, see, and they're you know, whenever you're not conscious of something, it becomes a devil. I don't care what it is. If you're conscious of it, it actually it transforms. But when it's happening unconsciously, it becomes a curse and a devil. So in this case, whatever it is you're supposed to hear in below, since you're unconscious of it, and you know what was kind of a clue to that is, typically, if you're with 3 other people, you'll know at least one, if not 2. There'll be one person that you won't know, and they might even be missing. you know, but at least you'd know two. So, or one.
Mhm.
The fact that you don't know three of them is a symbol to me that is just a aspect that this is a dream where I need more familiarity with dream images. I need to become more familiar with unconscious contents. And if I don't, in other words, I need to become more conscious of unconscious contents. And if I don't, if I'm totally unconscious of the unconscious contents, they're going to be somewhat hellish and devilish, you know. So, you know, you have the devilish doctors in the second part, and then you have the devilish um, uh, whining things in the third part. So anyway, I'm saying this is a dream that to me, Ivan, is one I would not want to give up on. I mean, I would say this is I want this to be part of my personal myth. So the way I make them part of my personal myth is to draw them and color them. Then, boy, boom, I'll never forget it. That dream is now, you know, through what you know, alchemists say, we need relentless memory. You know, we need to be relentlessly remembering, and this is one I would now do. How about you, Charles, or Sandy, or Kevin, or Tim? Do you have any comments?
Well, I didn't hear the whole dream, but
Okay.
I assume there was a part with mosquitoes.
Yeah, in the basement.
Oh, okay.
Dingy basement. He's got a bed in a corner of a dingy basement, and that's supposedly his home, and there's mosquitoes that are whining past his ear, and he's helpless to control them.
I don't know. I think the symbol of the mosquito is interesting because it's a insect that will take something from you, will drain you in a way that is often unseen. You won't see it until it's already taken from you, and it's universally hated. There's no one that says like, "Oh, I like mosquitoes," you know.
Good point.
So I think it's an interesting image, the mosquito.
Yeah, that is the blood aspect of them, that they are blood drainers.
Yeah, they like take
In the
vitality.
basement, you know, I mean, there's a blood drainer, you know, and they are, and there's absolutely no control of them. How about you, Sandy? Did you have any thoughts?
Well, something stood out for me, and I could be wrong, but Ivan, did you get into a car to go home and you put the seat back?
Yeah. And I was actually leaning it back into people, not just pushing it back, but being really obnoxious about it.
And what stood out for me is you said this is really new behavior, that this isn't like your normal behavior.
Right.
Right. And I don't know, one dream, Craig, you talked about the ego. I mean, the car can be symbolic of the ego.
Yeah, it's the carrier of the ego, and you know, usually has four wheels, represent four functions. Yeah, it's a symbol of our ego.
So then I thought for some, and also the number 110 stood out to me. I know it was the fever, but something's cooking. And for some reason, when I wrote down 110, it looked like 2 ones. I don't know what it just occurred to me that something new is being cooked and coming into consciousness, like maybe a new function or something. And I don't know, is it possible that could feel like that could bug you at first? Because it's so different. It's like, you know, I don't know about this. That was just an kind of a thought that popped into my mind.
Yeah, that could be the case. The other thing that is interesting is I've had multiple dreams now where I've been getting into a car, but I've been a passenger. One of them I was in the front passenger seat in this one. The other one I was behind the driver. but I've been having more and more dreams where I get in a car, but I am not driving.
Yeah, you're
Oh.
not in control. See,
Right.
I would have dreams where uh, I'm trying to drive the car from the back seat, or I'm driving it and there's a big, rug over the left-hand side of the car. So I mean, in other words, but then suddenly, and the car's driving too fast. But even so, it seems to be fine. But my ego is thinking, I'm not able to control it, but the car is going fine without me. So I mean, it's the fact that you're the passenger in your own car or in a car that represents you, and someone else is driving is interesting.
And it's new behavior.
Yeah,
It's
and
different from your norm. I don't know, and that would,
Yeah.
I don't really know, but I mean, if you're developing a new function, that's going to feel strange. You're not
110. What do you think about that? I mean, that's 2 ones and a 0.
The one other symbol that just struck me too is, and it occurred to me when Sandy was talking about this, is you push back. And the symbol of pushing back, I think, is an important one. So whatever it is, you're really pushing back against it. It is something that you're fighting.
Well,
Uh,
go ahead.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I also feel perhaps this is a way of the unconscious to comment on your behavior towards the virus and the collective consciousness. Perhaps that's why it was so big in the beginning. It deals with the collective consciousness and now your reaction towards it. And so perhaps it's a compensation dream in which is telling you perhaps you're a bit too relaxed and he has to go to 110. But I don't know your conscious attitude towards the coronavirus to say whether there is a compensation dream.
Yeah, I suppose it could be. I'm pretty I'm a programmer, so I can stay home all the time. So I haven't gone out really, except for grocery shopping. But I've been honestly a lot more worried about the economy and just people I know getting sick than I am the virus itself.
Well, that's go ahead, Kip.
I was just saying, like, if also you are into extreme introversion, and it will then perhaps activate your shadows, which is with this fly and buzzing thoughts might come up, and it's because the activity of the psyche, it has to.
Well, a lot of people are experiencing introversion right now.
Yeah,
and they might not be super comfortable with it. Yeah.
I do have a comment on the. You said there's a point where your temperature was taken and it was 110.
Yeah.
I would interpret that as so the idea that there's really only, I guess, 2 numbers, 0 and 1, and 1 being a truly whole and complete number, and the rest of the numbers essentially representing ratios in relation to the 1. So 110, the 100 is like the big 10, and then the 10 on top of it is the little 10, and the 10 is just the little fractal of the 100. And when I see 110, it makes me think of like the 10 being encapsulated within the 100. And it actually is, it's like saying, I know this is really abstract and weird, but it's like saying that you're a 10 within the 100 or 110. And that's kind of like you within the self.
It's a complete, 10 is a complete, it means completion. And it's inside, it's contained in something else.
Yeah.
It's also, if you're a program, it's binary. One,
actually what-
0, 1, 0.
Look it up on a numerology site. It says the number 110 in general signifies relationships, infinite potential, and independence.
That's kind of what Charles was saying. There's
Yeah, it just makes me think of like, it's kind of Pythagorean or whatever, but like you basically you have a 10, which is whole and complete, representing like a 1. It's not skewed, it's not a ratio. And then you have a big 10 of 100, kind of representing the self. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, 11. It's 11 tens too. I mean, it's a multiple of tens, you know. But anyway, that's all. Does anybody have any other comments, and we can take another dream?
Well, I am curious what Ivan, what came out for you.
Yes. What do you think, Ivan?
I had no idea what to make of it.
Well, I think you're probably a little confused now. Sometimes, you know, I'll tell you, after like tomorrow, these dreams, I'm just thinking about them all the time. So I think more about them the next day.
I guess the biggest thing that I could make of it was just this feeling of being out of control in these different situations. And what you were saying about the false temples, actually, it wasn't what I was thinking, but it really resonated with me. It made a lot of sense of being in a place, but it was somehow that place was false.
Yeah, I mean, it's just almost deified Parthenon right now for some reason, you know, drugs, you know, supposedly, you know, instead of religion now we have pharmaceuticals, you know. I mean, not only that, but I mean, you know, even I mean, all the spiritual life now is chemical, you know. But anyway, let's think about that dream. I probably have some comments about it later. But how about Tim or Sandy? Do you have a dream?
I can find one.
Okay. Well, we did one. Charles, did we do one of your dreams? Or I think, oh yeah, we maybe did. I don't know. I'm trying to do them in order, but
I
if
think
I'm wrong.
last time we did one of mine, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but I think.
Well, I think, yeah, we were going to leave Gary and Ivan open, and then I don't know if Sandy had one, but why don't either you or Sandy, Tim, or Sandy, and then if you got time left, either Kevin or Charles or Gary, or we did Gary's, so it'll be either Kevin or Charles. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, this is from about 3 months ago. I'm calling it antique film.
Okay.
I have a couple of antique films that I take to get projected. A small, fragile home movie film and a 1-inch film to feed them to the woman running the projector carefully. We are simply checking in to make sure it works rather than looking at the image. It must be checking it to make sure it works.
Sprockets or something.
Yeah. The second is in almost perfect shape and one that has never been seen. A fellow helps feed the film into a machine to be lubricated before it goes into the projector. He expects to put a few drops of oil on it as it runs, but it runs so fast that he's squirting the oil in a stream. I really hope it doesn't break.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, it's very interesting that you know, I had all this film that was undeveloped, you know, and it needed to be, you know, it needed to be developed, you know. So to when you have a some kind of a set of images that have never been seen before, and you're working with the anima to to
To develop them.
to bring them up or bring them out into consciousness. But there's an aspect there that is not, you're not interested in the images. You just want to know if the images can be displayed, even though you don't really want to watch them. Okay. I mean, now that's a pretty interesting image, I think. I mean, I am going to put these through a projector, but the only reason I'm putting them through the projector is because I want to, I just want to see if it would work in a projector. But what the images are, I'm not really that curious about. And you're
And it's
doing it.
remarkable to me that they're antique films that have never been seen. So
Yes.
it's like some old archetype that has never been exercised or something like that.
Yeah, and it could be that if you had an antique film and it wasn't one that was relevant to you, yet you're trying to find out whether it's marketable or not, and you could sell it to somebody else, you know, maybe you don't care what's on it, you know, but it would depend on if the images had some relation to you. But let's say they did, okay? Let's say they did.
There are two films, and the first one is, it seems like an 8mm film, very fragile. And this does have a personal association because my family took these kinds of films when I was a little kid. And not too long ago, I had all of these digitized. And so I was going through them and trying to rescue these really precious memories.
Yeah,
And
the
other one,
unconscious. Go ahead.
the other one, you know, I didn't know what it was and I didn't seem to care about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, the unconscious has some images that are, you know, of dubious interest to the ego, you know, and the ego is just going along in the motions to see if they could be viewed, you know, but it doesn't seem very curious about what they are, you know. So it's almost funny. I mean, I think, you know, there's this, you know, unconscious images are rare and sacred, you know, and you,
Especially for an artist.
yeah,
Gosh, I'm making images all the time.
yeah. I mean, and you often, you know, I mean, I just lose them in the vapor. I grieve when my dream, I forget my dream before I write it down, you know. So and the anima is helping you. So you know, the two halves of your unconscious are dealing somewhat disinterestedly with images that in a dream you're dealing with images that the dream doesn't seem that the dream characters don't seem that interested in, you know. So I mean, that is a very interesting dream. I mean, I'm trying to I would try to say, you know, why am I so blasé or uninterested about these images? I mean, and yet the anima and I are at least going to see if they're viewable. Why do we care if they're viewable if we're not going to view them, you know? But and then the guy that's spraying the oil, okay, as he's spraying the oil on him, it's you know, he's doing it in a haphazard fashion, and that would probably be the shadow. I would say that the shadow is not helping the situation very much. You know, he's just there, and he's getting in the way, if anything. You know.
I mean,
But anyway, to me, this would be a very important dream for me because I am one who is continually reminded that I'm neglecting the images. You know, I mean, I have many recurring dreams judging me because I neglect the images, that I'm leaving them as unopened letters. And, you know, I had the one dream about the anima. I'm throwing them away, and the anima is collecting everything I throw away very carefully and just archiving it in a huge garbage bag, you know. So she is collecting the images I throw away, and she's keeping them. And then when I look at her garbage bag, I'm thinking, wow, that almost looks like gold in that bag. But it's all the refuse that I've thrown away. So I would say that even though we're not treating the images with a lot of respect, they deserve it. You know? So it's a sign that these things that are worthy of our respecting and honor, that we are ignoring them. And that's what the anima told me, is that I'm just ignoring them. So
I'm also thinking about the difference between the film, which seems to be something feminine and alive and vibrant, and the machine, which seems to be something masculine and mechanical and cold and dead. And it's
yet they're
like
a pair, they're a union.
it's like this guy is squirting the oil into this thing, trying to make the machine come alive, like the film is.
Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting. He's oiling the works. He's lubricating the works, and what you have is these feminine images and the masculine utilitarian. The masculine utilitarian and the feminine lyrical have to work together to let the images be displayed, you know, in this case. So there needs to be the marriage between the utilitarian and the lyrical to have whatever is going to come to fruition, you know. So I like it very much, and I'll tell you, I'm going to be thinking about this one in a couple of days. Anybody else got any comments?
Well, I don't have a comment on it, but I have a question. And this is just a general question. When you do dream work, do you just work with the dream, or do you consider what happened that day or that week, or do you consider your real life with your dream or not?
Who, me or Tim?
Just in general. I mean, just a question about.
Okay,
dream work.
if you were an analyst, that's the first thing you do, is you want to go through, okay, what's the conscious attitude? So you would go through what happened to, first they'd want to know what day you saw it, okay? Then they'd say, what happened that day, you know? And so it's important to date your dreams. I think that's a little overrated, but they always do it.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I shouldn't be listened to that much, because, you know, you know, most Jungian analysts, they used to be like, you know, 15 or 20 minutes on the conscious attitude, and then 40 minutes on dreams. Now they're doing 40 minutes on the conscious attitude, maybe 15 minutes on dream if you're lucky, you know. And that's because they don't want to do the dreams. You know, they'd rather be more therapeutic than, you know, something to do with you know, that. Anyway, I'm just saying that was my experience. And that was one of the things I wasn't too crazy about, that the analysts seem a little bit lazy when it comes to the dreams, you know, which is really the magical part of Jungian analysis, and what's really sets it apart from all other psychologies.
So it's really benefited you to work mostly with the dream.
Well, yes, I'm not a very normal person though. So I'm probably at one end of the bell curve, but I'd say that in my own life, I mean, I know that the most important thing for me is to have my feet on the ground and to be related to the earth and the rooted world and the feminine. And so I'm not really that concerned about, well, I'll tell you one thing. That's what this C.A. Meyer's wife, whose name was, I think her name was Lillian Meyer or something like that. But she said that she found out that the Jungians don't really want to hear your personal problems because they're working on symbols, you know. And so she had went to Emma Jung and she told her all of her troubles and all of her problems. And Emma Young's sitting there listening to her. And when she's done, she says, well, is that it? You know, are you going to end it all right now, or do you intend to, you know? and so she learned that they didn't have much patience for people going around saying, woe is me, because they were more interested in transformation and not ego adaptation as much as bringing unconscious contents into consciousness and then having a union with them, you know. And so that's kind of it's pretty. That's you know, Jungian psychology is not very friendly sometimes.
I actually heard her say that today.
You heard her say that?
Yeah, on a video. Yeah.
Yes, that was. I thought that was so funny, and it was so typical of Emma Young, you know, because she was this. She would never say anything, you know. I mean, she's very quiet. She was one of the most mysterious psychological types there is an introverted sensate. So, I mean, she's this person who's an introverted sensate. You know, if you had an extroverted sensate and they were planning a party, it would be all surfaces, all glitzy surfaces. And they'd be all kinds of people that would come and they'd have all kinds of this and that. But if it's an introverted sensate planning a party, it would be like the ritual at the Grail Castle where the Grail maidens bring in I mean, it's all ritual. There's something about it that's has to do with an inner contents, not outer contents. But
so
yeah,
did Tim have any comments on his dream? I was curious too.
I have, can I, Tim? I was just wondering whether there has been shift in the way you make images, because I think it's a very clear image of the anima, but it's a personified anima, meaning that, you know, what part of you are, you know, creating this projection, and which is obviously you paint, and I would dwell into if there is a change in your attitude towards your painting, you know, if we go back to the image of the woman and what she's projecting out, and I think you mentioned the feminine and the masculine and the number 8. I don't know if that provides some clue, but I don't know if you feel you have any change in your way you view your paintings and the way you want to paint them.
8
or draw.
millimeter.
That's interesting because that time in my life, it was right before I started teaching a class about my creative process, which has always been this kind of secret, very private way of using a model as if the model was my anima. Having a dialogue with the person beneath their personality. So, you know, the model comes and I get into a relationship with with my own projection and with the sort of subterranean material in the person.
Mm.
And for me, it's been really helpful creatively. And so I wanted to teach a class about it. And at that time, this is right before the class started, I was really nervous about whether or not anybody else would get it, because you'd have to be kind of you'd have to at least be interested in psychology to be able to even have an interest in this sort of thing. And so there was a lot of changes in not only the way I was approaching my own images, but the way I was approaching my creative life. But that's a really interesting perspective. I wouldn't have thought of that, but thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, no, I could just perhaps add, you say you sort of associated it with an archetype. So I don't know what kind of archetype is being constellated, but it seems like it has an extra push, basically.
I think, the fact that I think you had a very good point when you said that it's an 8. Well, eight is 2 4s. So, that's wholeness doubled, and whenever wholeness is doubled, that's something you're supposed to pay attention to. So I like the fact that it was 8 millimeter.
And the other one was 1 inch.
Yes, 1 inch. Okay, that would be unity. And see, you got 2 4s, and a 1. So I mean, if you know anything about Maria Prophetessa, she that's one of her things. Out of the 1 comes the 2, and out of the 2 comes the 3, and then then the 3 goes back to 4, and then the 4 is the 1 again. So I mean, it's sort of a thing. I was going to show you one thing here that I was see if I can find it. But it was you talk about the models, and here is this is something that Jeffrey Raff mentions, is Pygmalion. He's making this model, and he's falling in love with it, and then suddenly, because he's cooking it with his attention so much that it let's see if it comes alive. I mean, and it's funny because when I took art when I was in college, and this one guy who taught it, he's from New York. He had this great big beard, and he's Mr. Cool, and he always used nude models, and he had this one girl who brought her German Shepherd in, and she's just very, somebody. I just was thinking about her the other day, and I haven't seen her for probably 40 years. But I just wondered about her, and we were a bunch of kids from small schools around Iowa, and this guy would get mad because on both the male models and the I was probably one of the only boy in the class. All the rest of them were girls, and he was getting mad because we weren't drawing the nude models anatomically correct, and so he was telling us that he was going to give us a bad grade if we didn't. So the next day, everybody's exaggerating everything. I mean, I don't know. It's just the idea of the artist's model is very interesting.
Well, that that relationship is an archetype that I'm really interested in because
Yes.
it keeps appearing throughout history.
Mhm.
You look at like the Greek vases, painted vases, or the relationships we keep hearing about with Rodin and his models, or Picasso and his models. Picasso always or often would draw the artist and the model, and to me that's been just a really fruitful relationship. I'm a figurative artist, and so I've worked, I've been inspired by the human body my whole life. And it's about the last 20 years that I finally began to realize that I was drawing not only a shape, but a person, a psyche in the present, in the room. And that if I wasn't incorporating the psyche that I was encountering, then I really wasn't being present with the person.
Yeah, and,
So
and I
that's
think
how,
it's also an expression of your own soul
yeah,
coming
exactly.
out there, and to a certain extent, it's unclear whether it's in the outer world or the inner world,
Yeah,
and yet, I mean, it's the soul can be projected in the outer world. I mean, we all, men, particularly when they're young, they project on their anima, and then when they get older, they sort of pull the projections back in. But the projection and the fact that here you go, you're projecting images. How about that?
right.
I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. When
Yeah,
you're talking about the anima, and you're talking about the role of the model, and the role of art, and the role of, is the soul on the inside or the outside? I mean, it has to do with projection. So there's and the projection is the fact that there's an image within us that we have a hook on in the outer world, and that outer world object, even though it resembles nothing of our inner image, we give a numinous power to, and often that outer world object is totally unaware of it, unless they actually draw their unless they're say Marilyn Monroe or Greta Garbo or somebody like that. They know very well that they're the object of those projections, and they cultivate it to some extent.
so in this class, what I was trying to do was teach the students how to concentrate on the projective mechanism, and to realize that what they're seeing is partially something inside of them that's invisible until they come into the presence of the model.
It's very difficult to become conscious of a projection. I mean, Ivan, this is kind of your dream has to do, I think, with this as well, is becoming conscious of what's going on. It's very difficult, but it's really is the healing thing if it's done in conjunction with the serpentine path, that Gary had. I mean, but so anyway, the becoming conscious of projection is not easy at all. I mean, that's what I think I told this story where Joseph Campbell was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College for 40 years, the all girls college, and usually very wealthy women and or wealthy families. And he said, I thought I'd gotten over anima projection. He said, until I met my book editor at Random House, it was Jackie Kennedy. So anyway.
And at the end of his life, he had an apartment in Hawaii, and he said he always had to he would write out on the balcony, and he would put his table facing in rather than toward the beach, because he said otherwise I'd be writing about the goddess all day.
Yes. Well, anyway, that is that is something that is probably a. I like all of those dreams, every single one of them, and I particularly like Sandy had to go, but I particularly liked Sandy's dream. You know.
I have a comment about Tim's dream because, especially within context of teaching that class and, trying to teach them how to see underneath that surface image, to what is the psyche, what is the anima of these people that you're drawing, and how can you project a relationship into it? And when you look at your dream, it was, the concern was that, these have never been seen before. And of course, what you're thinking about these students is that they have never seen this way of drawing before. And now you have this machine which is running out of control. It's going through it, but there's no absorption. And you were, and you even said you were worried about, like, okay, when I teach these students, are they going to get it? And the dream was almost like saying, it was like showing the symbol, very graphically of like, if you're going to do this, has to be done very slowly and kind of almost repetitively, because I think whenever we deal with something that's really new, just hearing or seeing it once isn't enough,
Yeah, I mean that's a very mysterious dream. I like the projected part, the images, the that was you often like my wife has this dream of where something horrible is happening, and yet the ego's not paying any attention to it. Ego doesn't care. I mean, I had this dream that I was in the in the basement. It wasn't quite as dingy as a basement as Ivan's, but I'm sleeping down there with all these. Just a second here. Okay. Hi, Sandy. You're here for the last couple minutes. I was just going to tell about when the ego's not interested in things, is uninterested. My wife, would have these dreams where something horrible is happening and she just doesn't care. And I'm in the basement, sleeping with all these different animals, fawns and foxes and rabbits. And I'm sleeping in the unconscious with all these animal helpers. And an analyst comes down there, a woman analyst, and she starts talking to the animals and leaving me out of it. And I totally don't care. I mean, it was this, the anima and my instincts are conversing and leaving me out of it. And I don't care. I mean, that's a lesson to us all. I mean, I think, why are we so apathetic? I mean, it's apparently pointing out our apathy, about the images. Well, anyway, is anybody else have any closing comments, Ivan or Charles or Kevin or Sandy?
I guess one thing I wanted to say was earlier you mentioned having dreams about being in a car, but you're like trying to steer from the back seat,
yes,
or something like that. I've
sometimes had 2 seats back.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those dreams where I'm like trying to steer the car, but I can't be in the driver's seat for some reason, and I get really annoyed by that.
Well, yeah, it's you're not in control here. Somebody else is driving the car, and you think you're driving it, and you think you're in danger because you think you're driving it and you're not. So now I'm in danger, but the car's just driving along fine. So you know, it's going along okay. It doesn't need you, you know. Ivan or Sandy or Kevin, you have any closing comments?
Nothing.
Okay.
I think it was interesting that the dreams kind of connected. I mean, there were similar meanings. It seemed.
Yes. I mean, they did. I mean, I'm very fascinated by the fact that this pandemic is kind of coming up. Now, I don't think it's as much about the pandemic as it is about the playfulness of the dream writer. You know, the dream writer likes to use, likes to be very creative, you know, and it can take something that you think would have nothing to do with anything, and it'll just do a virtuoso job of pegging you where you
I feel like
are.
they're just enjoying the new material they have to work with, really.
Yeah, they're funny and they love it, you know. Well, anyway, we do have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and I don't know, I sent out a transcript of one of Stuart's visions that I happened to witness. You might want to read it. It's this was actually his control, and he's Ivan. If you could, and Kevin, if you two could instant message me on Facebook or wherever, and I'll include you on the mailing list, and I'll put this. It's about a 4-page transcript of I probably Saint Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, giving a lesson on the soul. You know, so anyway, if you could just instant message, I'll just include you on our mailing list. But anyway, if you want to talk about
I'll do
that, it's tomorrow at 10, Chicago time. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I love to have it start out real chaotic and then at the end make a little sense. Okay, we'll see you later. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.